IVM.
IVM Likes is an IVM production, and if you like our discussion about pop culture and movies, you should definitely check out our show Anything But Bollywood. Every week, Neha sits down to talk to some of India's best creators and filmmakers about art, cinema, their inspiration, and pretty much anything but Bollywood. So check it out, new episodes out every Monday. Hello and welcome to episode number 66 of IVM Likes. My name is Abbas and I am back, guys. I'm back from vacation. Hi.
Hi.
How are you all doing?
Hi.
Did you all miss me? Okay, crickets chirping.
We have another person back from the studio, Abbas. Why don't you introduce
I genuinely didn't even know you left.
Well, our esteemed guest is like, you were on a hiatus. I haven't been here in months. The esteemed guest, of course, who I'm talking about is Mae Mariam Thomas. Hi,
Hey.
welcome back.
Thanks, man. I've actually not really left. I've been mainly in the garage part of the building. They
Oh,
locked
really?
me up, yeah.
Oh, damn. You took the garage band part of it very seriously. I was warned by our other guest, Jaanam, to not crack such jokes, but
It's
I
fine.
did.
I think that's what gets us the listeners.
Attention.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you really think so?
That's what I've been told.
I love it. You're like, keep your standards low, guys. Real
Yes.
low.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do on this episode is we're going to give our recommendations like we do every week. And on the second part of this show, we're going to talk about some musical artists that we would love to see in India. Because India is fast becoming a stop on most international acts when they go on tour. So we'd try and fantasize and what's the word?
Fantasize?
Fantasize.
Not the right choice of words, but
Like fantasy cricket, so we'll have fantasy concerts in the second half of our show. But
That
before
sounds
that,
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's a lot better than let's fantasize. About what? You tell me.
music, nothing else. But before that, we're going to start
Abbas
off.
is in some whole other zone, guys.
I'm back from vacation.
also
I'm
wait,
all pumped.
let's not forget he's wearing a Jedi bathrobe as we speak, as we record. How are we
I
missing
don't
that?
even understand. I know the studio is really cold. I mean, I
Yeah.
love cold rooms. That's
Yeah.
why I live in studios pretty much.
Oh, but
but this is a whole other. You look like I have
I'll
no words.
actually post a picture with the release of this episode on
yeah,
our
yeah,
social
absolutely.
media.
Sure, give me feedback, guys, about how cool I look. Let's get to the recommendations, guys. I'm going to be recommending a documentary. Jaanam will be recommending a artist,
An album.
an album, and May will be recommending
like a documentary
a
series.
documentary series. So I'll go first. I'll start with a documentary film that I have recently seen. I have to be very honest, I haven't seen the whole movie, but from whatever I've seen, I've really loved it.
Are you serious? You're
Are you
recommending-
half-assing this recommendation?
Wow.
Josh used to do this all the time.
IVM Likes says really. Like, I saw part of something and that part was good, huh? I don't know about the rest.
I've got about 20 minutes, so the rest will be good only. The movie it's an HBO documentary. It's about this very famous wrestler called Andre the Giant.
Oh my god, yes!
Yeah? You
Hey,
seen
is
it?
it? No, but I heard it's good.
It's good, it is.
I haven't seen any of it and I heard it's good.
So the documentary is simply called Andre the Giant. It's about an hour and a half long, and it's and I've done about an hour and 10 minutes.
Okay.
It's very fascinating because the character it's based on, the person it's based on, Andre the Giant, is such a fascinating character.
Yeah.
He was known as the eighth wonder of the world because he was more than 7 foot tall. He was literally a giant.
I thought that was Khali.
That's because WWE then reused that for another giant because they
Okay.
wanted to keep that moniker going. But
Okay.
Andre the Giant is the original eighth wonder
Oh.
of the world. So the story picks up primarily in the 70s when Andre moved from Paris to America and started off in his wrestling career. And then it sort of traces his career from the 70s up till the early 90s, which is when he unfortunately died. And it has the who's who of the wrestling business speaking about Andre and who he was, how he was. And it's a very fascinating look because this obviously we all know wrestling is, in wrestling the wrestlers and characters are portrayed as larger than life, but this guy was literally larger than the normal person.
Than most lives.
Yes. And it starts off by talking about his stardom, how he reached, how he picked up wrestling, how comfortable he was in the wrestling ring because he could easily pick people up and throw them around, but how inside he was actually very gentle and very loving and caring. And he actually used to take care of the people he used to travel with and the wrestling business, and how doing the most normal menial tasks were so difficult for him because as a wrestler he had to travel all over the world, and something as small as putting on a seatbelt or sitting in a plane used to be very painful for him because his body parts were so big and enormous, and everything had to be customized for him. And he used to travel a lot, which is why he could never really settle down and have a family, so he could never spend time with his children and his the woman he had children with. That led to a lot of depression, that led to him getting into drinking. And there's this one story that Ric Flair tells, a very famous wrestler Ric Flair, where he spent a night with Andre the Giant where he drank 124 beers while he was hanging out with him, and that was just another night for Andre the Giant. And there are pictures of Andre holding a can of beer which fit between his index finger and thumb, so that's how large he was. There are interviews by Hulk Hogan, Vince McMahon, the biggest. It's like if you're a wrestling fan and you idolize the 80s, late 80s, early 90s scene of wrestling, this is a gold mine because most of those big wrestlers are on it. As a story, it's your traditional fall from grace kind of a story where someone who was really famous reached a peak and then sort of had a decline, but it's still worth watching. It's HBO, so they've done a lot of research. They've got footage from the earliest times where he was wrestling. Cool, it's made in association with the WWE, so they've got all the footage of the WrestleManias and the big events that he wrestled at. So it's a happy, sad story, but it's a great tribute to the great wrestler that he was. So check it out. It's called Andre the Giant. It's an HBO documentary. So that's my recommendation.
You know, Andre the Giant was he's in one of my favorite films called The Princess Bride.
Yeah. There's a section of the film that dedicates itself about 4 or 5 minutes about the movie. Yeah,
because it's so great. There's actually a really beautiful story. There was one of these like reunion interviews with all the whole cast, and I think Robin Wright. She tells a story about like how sweet and gentle he was, and I think she talked about like it was super cold and his hands were so big and warm. He's just put his hand like on her head to keep her warm and stuff like that. Yeah, he was like super sweet.
Yeah, we need him in the studio to keep us warm.
And not a Jedi club.
Till then, we've got the Jedi robes. So Jaanam, what do you have to recommend for us?
So I'm recommending a music album. It's by this Indian artist called Burudu. The album
How do you spell that?
It's Burudu.
Okay.
And they released an album last year which is called Ditties.
Okay.
And so basically they're an electronic duo.
I'm glad you took a deep breath and like pronounced that just perfectly.
Yeah? Okay.
Ditties. Any other word it could potentially sound like.
Yeah, let me also spell it out just in case you have some hearing aid.
Can I guess? It's Ditties.
Yes. Great job, Abbas.
Spelling bee win.
It's all from the robe that I get.
Okay.
Jedi mind trick. Yeah. When I get my spellings right.
So they're an electronic act, and it's what I like about them is they're not the conventional electronic artists. They also mix a lot of live acts, like they have live singers join them when they're on tour. So there's this one particular track from this album. It's called Indriya. It features this. The vocalist is called Sukanya Chattopadhyay. I hope I'm pronouncing it.
Chattopadhyay.
Yeah. Okay. Chattopadhyay.
Yeah.
So she's beautifully sung this song. This is my favorite song from the album, but the rest of the songs are also great. They've collaborated with other singers. There's one with Daniela Bastian.
Okay.
So this is not your conventional person sitting behind and pressing play. Right. It's a live electronic act.
Yeah. So from what I gather, you're a huge metal fan. So what made you gravitate towards
metal
this?
is my main genre, but I also listen to other genres, Abbas.
Right.
Yeah.
Jaanam was just like, don't pigeonhole me, man. Again.
Yeah, I listen to anything which is soothing to my ears.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how many tracks are on the album?
8 tracks.
Okay.
Yeah, 8 tracks on the album. And it's
and what kind of electronica is it? Like up tempo stuff like house, or is it down tempo and mellow and ambient? Like
it's more towards the down tempo and ambient, but it's also very I would say intense, emotive electronica. It's like the best time to listen to this album would be if your mind is clouded with thoughts and you're like probably in the midst of an emotional turmoil.
Ooh.
You would enjoy this album the best at that time. So yeah.
And secrets about Jaanam's life you don't know about. Like when you're going through an emotional turmoil, this album will really help, okay?
Yeah, so like what you do when you're sad and you anyway listen to sad songs to feel more sad.
What? Okay.
No, like, but I have a thing for sad songs, man. I'm genuinely quite a happy person, but I love sad music, man. Like really depressing stuff. Everyone's just like, why this stuff? And I'm like, I don't know. It makes me really happy.
Yeah, it just sort of connects with you.
All right. So does the emotional turmoil come free with the album, or do you have to get it on your own?
That comes free with life.
Ouch! Oh, nice.
Oh. Well done. I love when that does. It all comes free with life.
Yeah, so you can check out this album. It's they have it on SoundCloud, also Apple Music. That's where I found it.
So, all right. Yeah. What's it called? Ditties.
Ditties by Burudu.
Okay.
Awesome.
And finally, to our esteemed guest.
So yeah, my recommendation is a 4-part documentary series that was actually a recommendation from my brother Josh, who's also been on IVM Likes.
It's like two in one recommendation. Josh and me.
We together combined our recommendation together. So he told me about I don't know, you know how you have those moments where you're flipping through Netflix or Amazon and like nothing is sticking, like just nothing.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh God, I don't want to watch anything. And just like you watch half an episode, quarter of an episode, and you're just like, oh God.
Losing interest,
losing interest really fast. And you think, okay, there must be something better. And I think my brother, he just asked me, he's like, have you ever heard of Jimmy Iovine? And I was like, no, who's that? And he's like, watch the Defiant Ones. And that's the documentary, the 4-part documentary. I am someone, okay, I really love music. So I'm that person that looks at like the fine print, that sees who the producer is on every track, who has writing credits, who, everything. And I'm really well versed with like the back end side of like music as well as like, okay, who's sung on it or whatever, who's featured on it. And I'd never heard of Jimmy Iovine. And I watched the Defiant Ones. And Jimmy Iovine is he's the founder of Interscope Records. Which is basically like Lady Gaga and will.i.am and Gwen Stefani. Yeah. And actually this is very time, I don't know, I feel like I've decided to recommend this at a really great time because Kendrick Lamar just won the Pulitzer Prize for Music. Yeah. And so he's under Interscope Records. Okay. And so Jimmy Iovine is one of the biggest music. He's like a legend. He started out as like a really small time music producer, and the first person he ever got to sit down. It's like if Shravan joined, right? He sat down, and the first person to walk through his studio for him to record was John Lennon.
Oh, okay.
So imagine Shravan and John Lennon, okay? But
I would love to see that conversation going.
I know. So that's the thing. So Jimmy Iovine, the first
Jimmy
guy...
Iovine is the John Lennon in this situation.
No, he's Shravan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was making a comparison because he just started out as just like a guy who just recorded people in a studio and then became one of the biggest like music discover legends or whatever it is, and like a really big music industry great. And so he ended up started out with like recording John Lennon and Bruce Springsteen and Tom Petty, and he went out with Stevie Nicks. Like he's just the coolest guy. And that's when he started Interscope Records. And so it's not just about Jimmy Iovine, it's also about Dr. Dre. They're two really like huge greats in like the music industry, right? With the kind of talent that they've got. Like Dr. Dre discovered Eminem, you know, and Snoop Dogg and like so all these artists, like, so you have simultaneously you're watching the life of Jimmy Iovine and Dr. Dre, and you kind of understand like how they grew up, how they came from kind of similar-ish, backgrounds, underprivileged backgrounds, and at the same time, out of all of that became these big industry people in the sense that they were able to just like look at someone and listen to like them sing once and just knew. Like I think Gwen Stefani had a really great story where she met Jimmy Iovine for the first time and he's like, in 4 years you're going to be huge. And she's like, what? And then boom.
Wow.
Like no doubt. And so, yeah, and it's also fascinating to understand the politics within the music industry, you know, because I think who is it? With regards to like hip hop and Dr. Dre and all that, there was a lot of issues with like drug abuse and the East-West
East Coast, West Coast,
rivalry. And then with Jimmy Iovine, there was, I think with his side was about artists like Marilyn Manson and Nine Inch Nails, there was a big outcry against this very satanic music and whatever. So it was interesting to see the way these two really incredible guys believed in the music that they were supporting and like went all the way with it regardless, right? And just to see the kind of like someone like a Jimmy Iovine who's just like super stubborn and just like incredibly resilient, and Dr. Dre who's just like who is literally all about the music. Like if even one aspect of that song is not, he doesn't hear it right. He's like, this is not great. But it's also really funny because Dr. Dre also ended up putting out a couple of albums that like didn't do well at all. And then the two of them, the reason why it's about the two of them is because it actually starts out with them selling beats because the two of them collaborated together to create beats, and then I think they sold it to Apple. Right. And so then how it starts with that collaboration and then sort of traces the light of the two of them. So it's a 4-part documentary. It's amazing, and it's also really fascinating to see the intricacies of the quality of music that's put out, being able to do the things you really want to do and believing in it. And being able to achieve like all kinds of things. So I was genuinely amazed. I can't believe I'd never heard of this guy before. Like everyone knows Dr. Dre. But who the hell was Jimmy Iovine? Right. And and now, like I said, it's perfect timing because of Kendrick Lamar, and he also features in the documentary too. Okay. So if you literally look at every single one of the musicians in the documentary, you're just like, all these people are associated with these two. It's unbelievable. So it's really good. I would definitely recommend the Defiant ones.
So each episode is how long? An hour?
Yeah, about maybe a little less than an hour.
Also, I'm wondering how old would Jimmy Iovine be now?
He must be in his, I think towards the latter part, I think he celebrated like he must be like a little older than 50. I think he celebrated his 50th birthday or something. So
that's
maybe like as old as our parents probably.
Okay.
Just about. Well, it depends how old
I wish my dad was Jimmy Iovine.
He wouldn't be sitting in his studio.
Exactly.
I'm sure your dad wishes you were Jimmy Iovine.
Ouch. Jaanam's on a roll tonight, guys. Anyway, so those were our recommendations. I recommended the HBO documentary Andre the Giant. Jaanam.
I recommended the music album called Ditties by Burudu.
And
I recommended the Defiant Ones, it's a 4-part documentary series on Netflix.
And now it's time for our guest recommendation. So this week we have Dinkar from Geek Fruit recommending something for us. Let's listen in what he has to recommend.
Hey, it's Dinkar. I am one of the legendary hosts of the Geek Fruit podcast, and I would like to recommend a documentary series on Netflix called Dirty Money. It's great. It's about 6 completely unconnected episodes about various topics that deal with finance in the modern world. So there's a great episode called Cartel Bank about how HSBC basically helps drug cartels in Mexico launder money. There's one about the pharma industry. There's one about the whole Volkswagen scandal. There's one about Donald Trump, and one of the best documentaries I've ever seen is, I think, episode 5, which is called the Maple Syrup Heist, and it's this hilarious, ridiculous thing about it's as good as any heist movie that you'll see. So I highly recommend Dirty Money, and I also highly recommend you send me some money. Find me on Paytm.
So that was Dinkar from Geek Fruit recommending his choice for this week. We'll take a short break at this point, and when we come back, we're gonna talk about artists that we feel should come down to India and perform for us, because God damn it, we deserve it, right? We'll see you on the other side of this break.
Shunyavan, 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 Shunyavan.
$1 billion acquisition. Another copycat startup got farmed. No, the tech world in India is surely moving double the speed of this voiceover.
Tune in to Shunya One every Tuesday to catch us talking to the smartest people we know on the IVM Podcast website, app, or wherever you get your podcast from.
And we're back on this episode of IVM Likes. And in this round, we're going to talk about artists, international artists that we feel should come down to India and perform, because this is a discussion that we were having in the office and we thought, why not do it on the show? So guys, do you have your lists ready?
Yep.
Oh my God, it's all up here, man. All up in my head.
May doesn't even have a pen and
so
paper.
Many.
May doesn't need a pen and paper.
Yeah.
But it was not for today. Because like, this stuff is, I'm adding to that list all the time. All the time.
So let's kick it off, May. Who do you want to see
Well,
perform?
pretty much on the top of my list would be U2.
Yes. Do you have them on
No.
your list? Neither did I. How
Come
did I
on,
not
dude.
put
They're like
U2?
I'll tell you why I picked U2. See, a lot of these buggers are gonna die anytime soon.
I have a lot of those.
Yeah.
Super
We were just discussing about Paul McCartney.
exactly. McCartney coming to India.
Yeah.
He's been here before. It's not like he's never been here.
Just strap on a guitar and get on stage, Paul.
No, but U2, I would love for them to come down because, like I said, the Joshua Tree, like I grew up with all of that. And so for me, it would be a really huge deal to have them come down. I will.
The thing with U2 is they have these giant events of concerts. It's not like they're headlining a festival. If U2 comes down, they have their own stage design. They have their own
That's true.
sound system.
They're
they
bringing
have
full SL world.
everything. Yes. So yeah, U2. Yes, that's a great choice.
Thanks. I've got more. Don't worry.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Really?
Yeah.
You want to hear all of them? There's so many.
Or do you want to switch it up? Jaanam,
Let's keep
you
doing
get it.
let's
go
keep
like
doing.
1-1-1.
Sure.
Cool. I want to say Radiohead, but I know they will never come to India, so I'm not even bothering.
Never say never.
Doesn't Tom York do yoga or something? Why don't you come here for like an Ayurveda weekend in Cochin?
No, I don't think the band is ever coming to India. So yeah, keeping Radiohead aside, I
Wait a
will
minute.
say
Didn't Peter Greenwood
He came down to promote a movie for which he'd done a soundtrack.
Yeah, so he did. I think there was. Paul Thomas Anderson did a documentary about
Some
this,
Rajasthani folk musicians.
Shai Ben-Zur from Israel and Peter Greenwood and a bunch of Rajasthani musicians all hung out in a fort and made music. And so I cannot remember the name of this documentary.
So 1/4 or 1/5 of Radiohead has already been here.
So technically,
I won the whole band.
he doesn't
We all won the whole band.
convince the rest of it.
Then who did you switch for Radiohead?
I switched for one of my all-time favorite bands. It's called Phoenix. It's a French band.
The French got Listomania and all that, right?
Yeah. So I first discovered this band when I was in school in the 9th standard. I heard one track of theirs which is called If I Ever Feel Better, which by the way I have gotten Naveen hooked onto. So yeah, I heard this song and I completely forgot about it. And like I think 5 years ago, I was watching Entourage and this track played on the show. And I was like, wait, I've heard this before. And I looked it up. I googled the lyrics because I remembered the lyrics. I had forgotten the name of the song. And then I found it and I found the band and then I've just been like, I need this band, yeah. And honestly, everything this band does, every album of theirs is so good. I am never disappointed by any of their
They're pretty
releases.
awesome,
Yeah, I love
I'd agree
them.
with Phoenix. How about you?
I want two bands to come down together. I want this band to do a double tour, and those two bands
Too
are
demanding from us.
Yeah, now
serious,
that we're fantasizing. I want to fantasize like multiple bands.
Glad you said bands.
Those two bands are the Foo Fighters and Pearl Jam. I want both of them to
I
do a
have the
show.
Foo in my head too, man. Oh my
Yeah.
god, for sure. I would be with you on Foo Fighters.
So now the 90s bands are kind of reaching that legendary status as we
absolutely.
go along, and India has kind of had that image that the more legendary the artists are, the more likely they are to come down.
Like
to
Incubus.
India. Yeah.
like Incubus,
Yeah.
Third Eye Blind have come down.
Puddle of Mud has been here. Switchfoot
Yeah.
has been here. So now we're climbing.
Wolfmother.
Yeah. So it's
So
about
it's been-
time I think Foo Fighters come down here.
For sure.
Dave Grohl is like a rock giant at this point.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, we're losing out some of the grunge music legends as we go along. Chris Cornell passed away recently. movie. So Pearl Jam and Foo Fighters, like they are the music of us growing up in the 90s. So I would love to see both
I'm
of
not
them
a big
now.
fan of Pearl Jam, but I love Eddie Vedder separately.
Okay.
Like just his single stuff, single
Him
separately.
with a
Yeah.
ukulele.
Those.
Yes.
Just Eddie on his own.
All
Can't
right,
do
so
the band.
who else you got me?
I've got Jamiroquai.
Hasn't America been here?
No, man.
he
He's
hasn't?
not been here. Jamiroquai for sure. Because again, 90s, man. I'm a 90s
Yeah.
child. So, like, absolutely Jamiroquai for the win, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I would love to see them live. See him and them live. It would be
Jaanam?
amazing.
Okay, I'm just going to list out all the artists that I have. It's MGMT, Tesseract, Arctic Monkeys,
Oh,
please.
yeah. Arctic Monkeys for sure.
Yeah, Blink 182.
Really? Okay.
They're fun. They're a fun
yeah,
band.
I would
It's a
say I am.
different
It's a
kind
different
of,
lineup now, though. So
Yeah.
would you still see them?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I guess. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, the last album
Aren't they
was
just
good.
like 3 dudes?
No, one of them left. So now the other dude does the vocals. But it's a good album, the last one
Yeah.
that they did.
And I'll continue. Cloud Kicker, The Contortionist, Disclosure. I know they're not together anymore, but I wish
Okay.
they were. Flight Facilities, Flume, Foo Fighters, Foster the.
You've
this is
got
a-
alphabetical. You've sorted them out.
Yeah, because I was going through my playlist and seeing what I listened to.
Okay.
So Flight Facilities.
If you like all these bands, you'd want like Death Cab for Cutie.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
there. I actually skipped a few names, but
Kaiser Chiefs.
Future
Kasabian.
Islands, The War on
Keen.
Drugs,
Ah.
God is an Astronaut, Gorillaz, Hammock. I love this band.
Gorillas,
Hammock.
yes, that's another
Yes.
one I
Ooh,
would love to
Gorillas
see.
would be
Because
so
again, they come
good.
with their whole
Yeah.
projection and stuff.
The
that'd be
SL World.
amazing.
So, yeah,
Yeah,
so
the whole SL
they
World.
bring that Water Kingdom to
They
it.
should do a show at SL World. That would be
That's
amazing.
what I want you to be at SL World. So then it won't be that far for me because I anyway have to go to Gorai.
Yeah, exactly.
Be
I'll
fine for
travel to
London.
Gorai for you too. Yeah. Might as well go to Ireland and see them if I have to travel to Gorai only. Who else? Quickly.
Hosier. I heard you pronounce his name.
Yeah, Hosier. That's correct.
Jose. He'll come to the studio.
John Hopkins, John Mayer, Codaline, Lane 8, London Grammar, M83, A Perfect Circle,
Ah.
Periphery, The Strokes, The Staves.
Ooh, the Strokes. Oh man, I love that.
Yeah, 30 Seconds to Mars, Florence and the Machine, Rihanna, Churches,
Ooh,
Justin Timberlake.
the
The last few
So
names
that's
just
another
for
thing.
the...
Justin Timberlake, Bruno Mars, all those buggers, man, they should come down too.
Yeah.
Pharrell Williams came down, but didn't do a concert. I was just like, you need to sing, man.
Also,
That's-
these guys should come not for IPL and stuff
That's
like
what
that.
it's very
yeah.
irritating when they come to promote stuff and then they don't
Oh, by
do a
the way,
show.
I also know. You know how it's really nice to get the musician who had the theme song for your relationship to come and play at your
Right.
wedding? I know who's going to play at my wedding.
Who?
The Weeknd.
Oh.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I want Can't Feel My Face.
On your wedding? Okay.
Because you know,
gonna be a fun
I know the
wedding.
real meaning of the song is not what I thought it was. Because when I used to play it on the radio, I thought it was like, wow, he loves this girl so much he can't feel his face.
So what is it about actually?
Yeah, what is it?
It's about cocaine.
Oh.
Really?
Yeah.
Damn. Okay. I didn't know that.
So wait, why is this playing at your wedding again?
Because it was the song that we both fell in love with. And
Okay.
exactly the
So
same
nothing to
thing.
do with cocaine.
No. It's to do with the fact that I thought. Hey, listen, we're very innocent.
Yes,
okay?
yes. This episode is not going to go out. There's going to be no cocaine at the wedding.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll list out, since we were talking about legends who are here for we don't know how long. I mentioned Paul McCartney, David Gilmour. I'd love to see David. Roger Waters has been here. I'd love to see
Waters
David.
has been here, yeah.
Eric Clapton, for old time's sake. I want to see Eric
Oh,
Clapton
wow.
live.
You're really going like...
Yeah,
oh,
John
like-
Mayer can probably support him on that
Yeah.
tour. Yeah. Tame Impala. I want to
Oh
see
my
Tame
god,
Impala.
yes! Why did I put that?
Hey, Tame
Oh,
Tame
shit.
Impala fits right in the Weekender headliner kind of slot.
They
where
kind of do.
Don't they?
Because they had, like, they brought down Bombay Bicycle Club, man. So Tame
Exactly.
Impala, Death Cab, all these kind of, like, fit in that
Yeah.
same kind
Yeah.
of range.
So if any concert promoters are listening to this, festival promoters, please do.
We have curated a lineup for you guys.
we have already.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, okay? Since Led Zeppelin has not been together for many years. They are on my wish list, but there's this new band called Greta Van Fleet. Has either of you heard them?
No.
They sound exactly like Led Zeppelin.
What are you
for
saying?
real?
So I'd love to see Greta Van Fleet because I can't see Led Zeppelin.
That sounds like you know what? That actually sounds like your future wife's name.
Greta Van Fleet? Yeah, I'll marry her.
Abbas movement marries Greta Van.
That's
If she
4. You're
sounds
marrying
like-
4 dudes.
That's okay, as long as they sound like Led Zeppelin.
You're marrying that.
Slipknot. I'd love to. Yeah, I'd love
I
to
never
be in a
listened to
Slipknot
them.
mosh pit, man. It's
Okay.
again SL World.
Yeah.
Ozzy Osbourne.
Oh yeah.
He's on his farewell tour.
Ozzy.
Just come to India, Ozzy. A couple of songstresses: Adele, Alicia Keys, Kelly Clarkson.
Oh my God, Alicia
I'd love
Keys
to
would
see
be
all
so
of them.
good. So good.
Sheryl Crow. I'd love to see Sheryl Crow.
yeah.
Oh, that's like, quite old school.
And the
That's
last
quite
person
90s.
I've put on the list as a comedian, I'd love to see Weird Al Yankovic perform in India.
Oh my God. Oh God, if we're going comics, then I'm going nuts, dude.
Musical
We should do an
comics.
episode.
Bill Bailey.
Yeah, sure.
Bill Bailey would be
Steve
so
Martin
great.
even.
Steve Martin.
Yeah.
You know, Jerry Seinfeld should come down. Oh wait,
Oh, yeah.
he was going to, but he didn't.
Parking
Oopsie.
issues. Yes. So that pretty much was
Such a
our...
Bombay problem.
I know.
Such a Bombay problem.
Do you have any last names to add quickly, May?
No, I think I'm pretty much done. I think you guys like hit
You
the nail on
peaked
the head.
at the weekend playing at your wedding. You're
Yeah,
like,
that's
this
pretty
is
much it. I'm done now. I think I peaked with you too, man. What are you talking about? You guys were like, oh my God, we forgot they existed.
Yeah, you kind of
Yeah,
did.
yeah, even I did.
That's sad. Anyway, so if any of these bands, any concert promoters, festival organizers are listening to this episode, these are the bands that we love to see in any city in India.
You
Bring
should
them
totally
down.
post our wish list.
Yeah.
No, we're actually doing a Coachella lineup poster with all the names on it.
Oh, well
You
done.
just leaked the poster idea on this episode. But then you're already looking at the poster
Yeah.
if you listen to this episode.
Yeah.
Nice.
Abbas is like, I forgot we record this in advance.
Yeah. I've been on vacation, guys.
Yeah, I'll send you my list
Yeah.
as well, so you guys have that on the poster.
Cool.
Awesome.
So that was an episode of IVM
Oh,
Likes.
is every do we each have a stage, like the Mae stage and the Jaanam stage, the Abbas stage,
Let's.
We should do that, yes.
or the Glenda on Fleet stage?
Then all the stages merge and the Foo Fighters play because we all three of us
No,
had-
you too, please. What are you
You too,
talking about?
please.
They're always a
Let's
headliner.
each have a headliner.
Yeah, let's each have a. You two is clearly going to be.
Headlining yours. Who's headlining your stage?
I think Phoenix. Maybe.
I
My-
think
big enough for me,
you
but-
two and the Weekend, dude. That's what's happening at my stage.
Paul McCartney uncle is headlining my stage.
Well done.
Yes.
Arctic Monkeys
He'll
actually
close
headline
with
mine.
Hey Jude and everybody will be happy.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
We'll close with Sunday Bloody Sunday.
Cool.
It'll be the last weekend day for the weekend only, no?
Yes. Wow, that was very well. And then the weekend will come. Yeah. On that note, we're going to end this episode. Please join us next week where we'll come again with our bag of recommendations and we will see you all. Follow us on social media. We are IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. See you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.
As you can see, we have a podcast listener in his natural habitat. Millions of years of evolution have led him to this point. He's on his way to work and listening to podcasts makes his miserable day better. He will now head to work and use all his knowledge to communicate with other colleagues and possibly future mates. You can find more of his species on ivmpodcasts.com, your one-stop destination where you can check out all the coolest Indian podcasts. Happy listening.